Everybody, running just a couple of minutes behind here, but we'll go ahead and get started. You're fine. For the November 10th, 2025 Planning Development Zoning Commission meeting, we'll start with roll call. Ryan Miller, that's me. I'm here. Kyle Moraskin.
Here.
Marianne Atkinson.
Here.
Kenneth Haynes is unable to join us this evening. Christy Kennard is unavailable at the moment. Dolores Martin.
Present.
And William Richardson. Here. Excellent. If I ask everybody to stand for the pledge, please. Thank you very much. Okay. I don't believe we have any public comment cards this evening. Is that correct? No? Okay. Okay, we'll open with our consent agenda, which just is one item this evening, which is approving the meeting minutes today.
Second.
Second, all those in favor? Unanimously there, 5-0. Okay, regular agenda. Agenda item A, consideration and possible action to approve Avellino Section 2 final plat. Who would like to tell us?
Good evening, Commission members. This is a new section within the Avellino Master Plan along the southern side of Rodeo Palm Parkway. The proposed plat generally confirms the master plan approved in January 2024, and staff recommends approval with conditions. They need to make some minor revisions on the plat and provide signed Mylars, and also drainage plan has been approved, but because the property is in ETJ, they need to provide drainage district signatures also on Mylars.
Okay, excellent. Who has questions about this? No? Have a motion then?
I'll make the motion with conditions.
Second, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously, 5-0. Agenda item B, consideration of possible action to approve Meridiana Section 8A preliminary plat.
It is a new section, residential section in Meridiana, which confirms to the most recent approved GDP amendment number 24. There is a minor revision required, so staff recommends approval with condition.
Very good. Okay, who has questions about this? No questions? Motions then?
I make the motion with conditions.
Second.
Second? Okay, thank you. All those in favor then? Motion, any opposed? Okay, and motion passes 4-1. Agenda item C, consideration of possible action to approve Meridiana Section 9 preliminary plat.
This is another new residential section in Meridiana, located on south side of South Inspiration Way, and this is also they need to make some minor revisions. Staff recommendation is conditional approval with conditions outlined in the report.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about this one? No? Motions?
Motion to approve with conditions.
Second? Second. All those in favor? And any opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-1. Agenda item D, consideration possible action to approve Meridiana Section 15A preliminary plat.
It's another new residential section located west of Meridiana Parkway. Confirms with GDP amendment number 24. They need to make minor revisions on Mylars, and staff recommends approval with 2 conditions.
Okay. Any questions?
This one's all 60-foot lots, right? I just want to make sure I'm on the right one.
This one.
There's 60-foot one.
Thought so. Okay.
Motion to approve with conditions.
Second.
Second, all those in favor? And all opposed? Motion passes 4-1. Okay. Agenda item E, consideration of possible action to forward a recommendation of approval, City Council. This is for a subdivision variance request seeking to vary requirements of the street requirements and sidewalks.
This is a subdivision variance request for Primrose development. The master plan for Primrose was approved by City Council in July 2025. Primrose is located in city's ETJ, south of Rodeo Palms Parkway, east of County Road 48, and adjacent to Avellino subdivision. The Primrose master plan, covering about 175 acres, proposes residential lots with minimum 60-foot width and 6,300 square foot area. There is an existing 40-foot unimproved right-of-way that extended from the south side of Rodeo Palms Parkway, west of future Kirby Drive, continuing south to Highway 6. At the time of master plan approval, the developer planned to abandon this right-of-way. Preliminary plats for a couple of sections and the detention pond were approved in August 2025. Applicant has since indicated that the right-of-way abandonment is no longer feasible and now seeks to proceed with master plan amendment to dedicate the additional right-of-way for the existing 40-foot right-of-way. Since the approval of the master plan, there have been discussion on considering the realignment of Kirby Drive as part of the Major Thoroughfare adopted a Major Thoroughfare update process to align with the existing right-of-way as much as possible and reduce negative impact on development. Ordinance requirements include construction of one half of all abutting road and sidewalk, as well as a right-of-way dedication. For this, right-of-way is 10 foot along the existing 40-foot right-of-way. The applicant states that this dedication reduces the effective width of the property and impacts the lot depth and home design flexibility. So applicants request waiving immediate construction of existing right-of-way and sidewalks, allowing a escrow of funds in lieu of construction, and reducing right-of-way width from 60 feet to 50 feet for 2 north-south streets in section 1 and 2. Staff reviewed the requested variance and for right-of-way improvement found that the site has unique circumstances. Only half of the 40-foot right-of-way is in the property and the applicant depends on the neighbors for right-of-way abandonment. Realigning Kirby Drive is also being considered. A strict enforcement would require immediate road and sidewalk construction, allowing escrow defers construction until connectivity is practical without harming public welfare or neighboring properties. Regarding reduced right-of-way widths, the reduced right-of-way request is due to existing right-of-way conditions and potential Kirby Drive realignment. The reduction for 60 to 50 feet applies only to 2 interior streets in section 1 and 2. It meets county standards where applicable. It has been allowed in similar master plan developments and will not negatively impact safety, life, air, or traffic. The applicant also submitted master plan amendment for Primrose, and which has been included as a separate item in tonight's agenda. Approval of this requested variance is required to approve that master plan amendment. Staff recommends approval of this variance request with conditions outlined in the agenda date.
Okay.
Applicant is here, and if you have any question, they have a presentation as well.
Okay, very good.
I don't believe I need to give the presentation unless there are questions. I think Ellie did a great job of outlining it. It's a complicated issue, but I think it's pretty clear in the fact that you guys have approved the master plan once before and are likely familiar with the Kirby Drive situation that Ellie mentioned. So really what it gets down to at the end of the day is the strict enforcement of the city's requirements here to build half of a local street on this 40-foot alignment would not allow for the flexibility to relocate Kirby Drive in a way that matches what the adjacent property owner wants and what city staff is recommending. So I think this is really just a kind of the most logical way to proceed on realigning Kirby, dedicating the appropriate amount of right-of-way, but not constructing a road that the city doesn't want or need. And then the 50-foot right-of-way question, as Ellie mentioned, we've done that in Meridiana. There's still a 25-foot building setback on this, and in addition, we'll be dedicating. That's one of the things that we are offering with our variance request is the 10-foot public utility easement on both sides of this 50-foot public right-of-way. So in essence, creating a 70-foot wide utility corridor, which allows for all the utilities plus 5 feet on each side of what would have originally been granted with the 60-foot public right-of-way. So the roadway will be the same width. That we did meet with the county, and there was a little misunderstanding of, oh, well, if you have a smaller right-of-way, you're going to have a smaller road. Well, that's not the case. The road will still be the same width. We'll still build it the same standards as required by the development agreement. Still be a 28-foot wide road with the specific thickness that the county requires. The only condition that I had a little bit of heartburn about was the one that we receive approval from the county for this request. I don't believe that's required, and that was something that we discussed, that there's an interlocal agreement that specifically gives the city of Manvel, you guys, the authority to approve the subdivision ordinance as you guys would like. So I'll kind of leave it to y'all if y'all want to agree with that or disagree with that, but I think it kind of takes the power away from y'all and puts the authority to make that decision back in the county's court, and I don't think that's not what you guys want. And if need be, if we have to do a 60-foot right-of-way instead of 50-foot right-of-ways, the developer can do that, but it's going to, in essence, create smaller homes. We're basically taking the width out of the right-of-ways, out of the lots and putting it in the right-of-way because the lots, there's only so much land there. And it's defined strip of land. And so you have Kirby Drive alignment, and then you have your lots and your 2 streets. And so it's just, where is that? Is it taxable value in the lots or is it not? And so if that one condition can be removed, that's the only thing that I would request, different from what the recommendation was. And we can certainly pursue that. We can get with the county engineer, but I don't think it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Any questions for our, yes, ma'am?
The Kirby line that you've got going on here, the land that's around that, is that something that you guys left there for Kirby, or did you not acquire that?
The I guess we affectionately call it the donut hole.
Yeah.
That's owned by the Weitzman Group. And so that's kind of, there's 3 main entities working in this area. There's more with KB and Avellino, but there's Beazer, there's the BCS group, which you'll hear from later, and then there's the Weitzman Group. And so most of these properties are really just controlled by one of those entities. And this is one that the Weitzman Group owns. Unfortunately, their development timeline is not the same as Beazer's right now, and so they don't know what they want to do with that donut hole. And it's kind of unfair for us to dictate that, to say, hey, we're developing this property now, you need to develop your property. They can develop it on their own timeline. And so they're just a little bit behind our development process.
And this is where you're requesting not to do the right-of-way because it's not going to be developed in the future that you.
Not to
see?
construct it at this time,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay. And just for clarity, Brad is asking that we not include recommendation number 3, which is approval contingent upon approval from the Brazoria County Commissioners Court.
Yes.
And if I may.
Yes, please.
I think we added that condition just to make sure that there's no confusion, and because we did have communication with the county engineer's office, and that's the input we got, that this wouldn't work according to them. And I'm not 100% sure what communication he had with them.
Yeah.
So maybe we can resolve it when it goes to city council for approval, because we want to make sure that we have a discussion and we everybody's on the same page in terms of what the county engineer's office is saying and what agreement you're talking about. I know there's planning authority involved since it's a subdivision variance. So we included that to make sure that there is, we're not missing that little communication we had with county engineer's office.
Yeah, so if we omit that one, y'all can add it back in if you need to at council level or.
I would recommend that it stays so that we can address it at city council. When we get to city council, if we are able to resolve it by then, we can mention it to them and take it off at that point.
Okay.
That works for us. Yeah.
It's easier to delete later
Then add.
And now.
That's fine.
That works.
Okay. I'm open to a motion then if nobody has any additional questions
motion passed with conditions.
with a condition.
Second.
Second. All those in favor then? And all opposed? No?
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion passes 5-0. We're going to skip around just a smidge here and go to agenda item G. Consideration and possible action to forward a recommendation of approval to City Council for the Primrose Master Plan Amendment.
So this is the first amendment to Primrose Master Plan. I mentioned the location and every other information for the last item. So the amendment includes items provided in the report, and based on all of these, staff recommends approval of this amendment number 1 with 5 conditions. They need to revise notes, one of the notes. The mouth boundary needs to be revised. They need to verify if TIA or DIA needs to be revised and provide them approval. The variance that you recommended approval, they need to provide a note on that. And there is a typo about the previously approved variance that they need to revise it.
Okay. Who has questions about this one? No questions? A motion?
I'll make the motion with the 5 conditions and notes.
Second.
Second. Okay, all those in favor then? And any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Let's run back to agenda item F now. F will be consideration of possible action to forward a final report recommending approval to City Council regarding the PUD that we discussed last time. I believe applicant is here and has a presentation, so we'll actually start with that one. Good evening.
Thank you. Again, we've met before a few times, Ian Knox, through different entities. Nice to see you all again. Let's see here. So what we have is a short presentation listing out the changes that have occurred in the draft document since the first submittal 2 weeks ago. I want to say it was 2 weeks ago. Time flies when you're having fun. So this will be, give me 1 second here. There we go. This is for the Manvel Crossing development, which you all are, I'm sure, familiar with based on the previous meetings as well. What we have here is just an image of the site. To the west is it's Old Airline Road, I think County Road 48. South is Highway 6. Directly to the east is Manvel Town Center and 288, just to give you an idea of where that is. And that is also south of some of the developments you just took action on. Sorry, it's not my computer, it's acting up. There we go. So what I'll be doing is going through some of the changes that we made, like I mentioned before, from the very first submittal that hopefully you didn't look too closely at, but that's because I've changed so much. I'll go through each of these items, and some are small, some are major, and we do have more that we are going to address with city staff as we move forward. First, there was quite a bit of general formatting and organization that we moved items around, removed some items as well, but I'll get to that later in this presentation. But mainly typography and location in the actual document. One item that we added is that if the PUD expires, or PUD if you prefer, the location will revert back to the light commercial based zoning district with no PUD overlay. Goals and objectives, number 3 in that we rewrote to make it more relevant to the whole purpose of the PUD, which is to bring commercial development to Highway 6. Before, it had something to do with the feel of the city, which it also made sense in a way, but this is just more relevant to the development. Added a 3-year time frame for codes at time of adoption. What that means is whatever city codes are in place at the time of adoption, 3 years later, if there are amendments that have taken place, they will be active on the development. And that's mainly, you start doing a large development like this and things change. We just want to make sure that we're able to continue moving forward with the plan until the time comes. And if it lasts longer than 3 years, current amendments will apply. Let's see. Also something on that. The ICC codes, Fire Code, International Building Code, all those, whatever amendments happen in that during the time, apply. That is not part of the 3-year requirement or regulation. In the single tenant signs, there was a reference to pylon signs. We're not permitting that. This is just monument for single tenant, which, as you know, pylons are the poles and monuments are the nicer looking ones, I'll put it that way. We also removed the no limit language for directional signage. There was something in there that stated no limit on directional signs, and that's a no-no, so that's gone. Removed that. There was also a 0-foot setback requirement for anything inside the development adjacent to collectors or right-of-ways. We removed that as well. It just, we took that from another regulation and it just didn't seem to apply in this situation. What I believe that tied to was strip centers or multi-tenant buildings, and the fact that there's 0 lot line between some of those, that's irrelevant. Bless you. The codes apply. The ICC codes and fire codes and building codes will cover that, so it's not necessary for the PUD. Also added setback requirements for taller buildings. So the PUD allows up to 150 feet for a larger mixed-use building. What this does is every 10 feet of height over the base, which I believe was 60, don't quote me on that, I think it's 60 off the top of my head, they have to have an extra foot of setback for the building. So it just pushes it back further so it's not sitting right on the property line, say when residential comes in. We also removed the gasoline stations, fuel stations, car wash, and mixed use from the use table. Mixed use is the nature of a shopping center, so why bother making it a use? So that's gone. It's basically a commercial mixed use in its nature itself. Second page and final of these. There was a section called temporary uses. Upon review, it tied more to residential subdivision development for sales offices, construction trailers. I mean, there will be some form of that out there, but we're not wanting to call it a temporary use. And there will be no sales office. I want to make that clear, unless Ryan disagrees, but I'll let him tell me I'm wrong in a second. But that whole section was nixed, again, more residential based. We increased the corner side setback from 5 feet to 10 feet. I believe in the code right now, the Manvel City Code, it's 5, but 10 just makes more sense. And so we're, for safety purposes and traffic, we increased that. Although 5 feet doesn't seem like a lot, I'm sure it could make a difference in some way, shape, or form. Limited outdoor storage to home improvement and large retail. I think this is going to come up in discussion as well. But as it sits, that the draft that you have, Outdoor storage over 80,000 square feet only applies to essentially Home Depot, Lowe's, that kind of development, the large home improvement, and large big box retail. That's how it's worded in this draft. Removed clearing and grading section. What that refers to is the clearing and grading of a site. What we had was an allowance to begin clearing and grading at the time when the plat was approved. We didn't see that being necessary. Permitting is when that should take place. It has been done in the past in many jurisdictions, but it never really seems to work out very well. So that is nixed. Change the multi-tenant sign locations. What that's referring to, the first submittal that you all received showed 3 multi-tenant pylon signs, very similar to the signs in Manvel Town Center as kind of a basis, along Highway 6, evenly spaced. What that was changed to is 2 on Highway 6 and 1 off Kirby to the north. So it's just a moving of 1. Also changed the single tenant monument size to match the sign District B regulations. That was a mistake on my part. I put directional sign size there and noticed it and said that doesn't line up, or Ryan did, and I updated that so it matches the city regulations. I will follow up on that just a little bit. The city regulations state 12 feet tall, 50 square feet in area. We like math, so I made it 12 feet tall, 60 square feet in area, so it is a little larger. Because, 5 times 12. We also added, added single tenant setback monument signs, a setback for 10 feet from property lines. In the last draft, there was not a setback requirement, and that could interfere with visibility, with traffic, and other sign visibility from different signs. The wall sign size was 25% across the PUD. We reduced that to 15%, getting closer to the city standards. 25%, what we did with that was further back buildings, larger buildings that are further away from the actual highway. We're allowing up to 25% for visibility purposes. That can be wiggled and changed slightly, but that's just how it is as of today. We also removed the entire section related to fuel signs because that was irrelevant after removing fuel stations. Updates to be made. There are more than just these 3. I want to make that clear. The exhibit updates, believe it or not, I managed to knock those out today, so that's already been done after this presentation was done. I was working with city staff to make sure that there was some, let's say the corresponding text to the exhibits was accurate, and wording, imagery, everything. There are definition revisions that are going to be required. The definitions are fine. Trust me, I spent plenty of time on them. I reread them 25 times. Just kidding. But the NAICS definitions are what we're going to utilize, and I'll find a way to make that clear in the PUD, not just referencing NAICS. That way, if anyone has that document as a single item, they have it in front of them. And potential revisions to the use table based on city staff and our entity's communication. So that is it. Sorry if it wasn't as short as I made it seem, but if you have any questions of that, you can let me know. Otherwise, pass it on to Ryan with BCS if he wants to discuss anything with you guys.
If you have anything else to add to what we're looking at right now, let's go ahead and do that right now, and then we'll move on to presentation from the city.
After you. No, I have nothing else to add. Sorry.
Nothing else, okay?
Hi.
If there's anything else you'd like to add, please go ahead and do that now. And we can have more discussion later too. But
Yes, Ryan Sweeney, BCS. Pleasure to see everybody. I'll make it short. We've been working very hard to collaborate to craft a PUD that everybody can be really excited about. It's an extensive document, there's a lot to it. But ultimately, I feel like we've pretty much worked through a lot of things that the city wanted, and we agreed to those. And I don't really see any reason why we can't agree to most everything that's been presented. I think it's more about the uses now. And we've talked about those to some extent, but we look forward to visiting tonight if you have some questions about that. But ultimately, no car washes, no gas stations, no warehousing, no residential. We've even put in some parameters that can be included in the PUD where we've listed specific types of automotive uses. Think about, discount and Midas and different auto stores like Advanced Auto and different groups like that, but limiting those to one. Not that we're going to do more than one, but if a particular use in that category, we would do one in each sector. So I can explain more about that if anybody has any questions, but we're really, really excited to be making the progress that we're making.
I think we're going to hold questions until after we hear from the city, but we'll call you back up.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
Commissioner, so you have a good introduction about the project itself from the applicant. We've discussed this at the last meeting, and where we are at is just one reminder. This tract is right now in the ETJ, and there are three pieces to it in terms of council's final action. Number one is annexing the property into the city, and they've made a request for that. There's a public hearing that was had at the last council meeting, and it'll be continued at the next council meeting. Then the second piece is once the annexation happens, assigning the PUD designation or a zoning designation. So they've requested that the zoning designation that's assigned be a PUD with the document that would govern the PUD. And the third piece is a potential 380 agreement between the city and the developer, which is also in discussion right now. From Planning, Development, and Zoning Commission standpoint, the biggest piece that y'all are working on is the PUD document and making a recommendation to the council whether your thoughts or your recommendation on the PUD based on the document that we have. So at the last meeting, we received a draft version of the PUD. Y'all needed more time to review it. I provided a markup version of that draft. Since then, last week, we received another updated version, which is included in the packet online. And right before the meeting, I also provided you with a handout, which includes a list of items that staff wanted to discuss and bring to your attention. If you read through the report, there were two things that I want to highlight from the report. One was the fact that we also discussed last time, staff is recommending approval, or staff is supportive of this approach of assigning a PUD for this property and having a PUD document to govern how the development goes. At the last meeting, the only issue we had was like there were certain aspects of the document which either needed revision or clarification from staff standpoint. And we had communicated that with the applicant, and like Ryan and Ian both mentioned, we've had several phone calls, several collaborations, several back and forth with staff, with our city manager's office, other staff members as well. And we've got the revised document. And when we did a review, we feel there's still a little more clarification and a little more changes that need to be made, and I would like to discuss some of those things today as part of this presentation. So we can go list item by item on the list, but before that, I would also like to highlight a couple of things. So there are like some land use related aspect, some regulation related aspect, some formatting related aspect that needs to be addressed. And with PUD, you always want to be aware that it is a zoning district, but it's also a mechanism to take our base zoning and cities ordinances and in a way make changes to it to make it lenient or to make it stricter so that we can achieve a certain type of development that is desirable for the community based on what we've agreed upon in our comprehensive plan discussions and strategic plan discussions. So that's what the approach of the PUD is. So when the applicant is making this request and putting together this document, there will be elements where they are requesting to have some of the requirements be lenient compared to what we have, and some of the requirements, like Ian gave the example of the corner setback, where they want to go a little more stricter for safety reasons or whatever, compared to what we have in our current ordinances. So they are making some of those requests, and y'all would be charged to consider that and make your base your recommendation based on whatever they're requesting and what we have, to see if it works for City of Manvel's vision in terms of development. So with that, I'll quickly go item by item from the list. The first 5 items, I would say there are some general kind of clarification or fixing error kind of comments. The first one would be, on page 20, we have a section which talks about public access easement. We think we understand what the applicant is trying to do. It is a section from our city's ordinance, but our ordinance talks about it being a parallel access easement, where the intent is, like, when we are developing commercially along Highway 6, there's a requirement that there be a parallel access easement along each pad sites, and there is an exception for it depending on the depth of the property. But the document calls it public access easement. Now that results into a little confusion, because there's going to be other access within the property. So we just want to make sure that there's either some clarification provided or that be revised. Number 2, there is a reference to impact fee mechanism on page 10. Our recommendation would be to make sure either that is taken out or it is revised to reflect whatever the terms of the potential 380 agreement would be. Now, the third item is there's a reference to some temporary detention in the introduction part of the document, and we're not 100% sure we understand exactly what is being envisioned for that. So we need additional details and clarification. We've had some discussion in the past with the applicant where I believe it was anticipated that there's an off-site detention that is being considered currently, which eventually could be made part of this development, but we just need some clarity on that. And since this is a zoning document, this is something that is not very crucial or very critical. It's just clarification would help. Now, item number 4, there is reference to a design guideline in the document, and then we have development standards or design standards. We want to make sure we have a good understanding on what the design guidelines are and how it would be different from the design standards required in the PUD. I think our understanding is that it's going to be I know it's something that we very commonly see within residential development, where there will be an HOA standards, deed restriction kind of thing. We want to make sure it was put in intentionally, and there is some sort of guideline that the property owner or the development itself will have, and that's what they're talking about. And if that is not the case, we may want to take that out of the document. Item number 5 is about, like Ian mentioned, the land use allowance. We see 2 things. We see a list of definition which defines different land uses, and then we also see a list of permitted uses which includes a NAICS code and a description. We want to make sure that the NAICS code and its descriptions are accurate, because right now on the version that we have, we did spot a couple of code and description which don't line up. For example, like I mentioned, there is one code which says something in the document, but according to NAICS, it's motor vehicles parts manufacturing, which is slightly different from what's included in the list. Number 6 to 9 is more land use related. Like the applicant said, Ian mentioned that car washes and gas station, and Ryan also mentioned that they're not intending to include allowance for these 2 uses in the PUD document, but we see that those are not listed in the non-permitted table as it was discussed, and we still see car wash as a definition in the definition list of definitions, and it talks about it being specifically somewhere. It looks like it's a carry forward or a typo that happened on the definition side. We want to make sure that is addressed. The other item regarding the land use would be the permitted land use table includes uses that we would generally require an SUP for, and which would be like your tire shop, your auto repair place, your hotel, motel, those kind of uses. What generally staff would like to see is if it is being included as a permitted use within the PUD, we would like to see certain locational criteria for those uses and a limitation in terms of quantity, how many car repair places you can have in the development and where exactly it would be located and things of that sort. We did not see that in this draft for some of the uses. We want to make sure that's covered or it is excluded from permitted so that if the use is being considered, just like the SUP process, we consider an amendment to the PUD to add that particular use. So there's PD&Z action involved and there's council action involved. So we just want to make sure that that is addressed as part of the permitted use allowance. Very specifically, the uses that, according to our zoning ordinance, right now requires an SUP. And like the applicant, item number 8, like the applicant mentioned, this version, they've included some separation requirement for certain types of uses, like the restaurant uses, and I believe also automobile vehicle repair use. And if you look at the ordinance, there's a 1 mile separation, and then there's a 500 feet separation for us, depending on the type of use. I want to mention to y'all that, like, the separation requirement that we have in our current zoning ordinances for SUP use, the standard one is 2 mile separation. But like I said, this is a PUD, and the applicant is requesting a different separation distance, and we would like you all to think about it as part of your recommendation process. And we're also wanting to make sure that the description of that is somehow associated in the table so that when you see that land use, you already know that, hey, it's not just saying allowed, it goes back and, hey, there's more to it, the separation. So that's a slight change that they can make. Then under this document, it still references the term mixed use. And then if you look at the definition list, the mixed use is defined to also include residential as one of the components. And again, just like the other definition item, it might be an item that got missed. We want to make sure that is addressed because we don't want any confusion that this particular PUD allows for residential in some shape or form. Then item number 10 is about sidewalk. So there is a section in the PUD document which talks about sidewalk. It specifically talks about sidewalks within the development, but you also have your Highway 6 and Kirby. Our current subdivision ordinance would require either construction of sidewalk along both the streets. The PUD document, if you take a look at the list of variances, they're also requesting a variance for sidewalk on along Highway 6. Now, like, just for context, the applicant's justification is that Manvel Town Center, which abuts this property, did not include sidewalk. But like, you know, I mean, in the past, we've had situations where sidewalks were considered for variances, and city's position has been that sidewalks are important. But since this is a PUD, and I think the applicant has also mentioned that they were open to escrowing fund for sidewalk at one point. I'm not 100% sure, but we need to address, we need to finalize what the request is, and we need to make sure that the PUD clearly reflects that.
And just a quick question on that. The PUD for the Manvel Town Center 2 is, even though it's a recent development, the PUD's fairly old.
It's very old, yeah. So some of the positions, like city's position on certain things would have been different back then compared to now.
Okay.
Item number 11 is about the Highway 6 overlay district. So the city has what we call a State Highway 6 SH6 overlay district. The whole purpose of that district is to have certain visual quality and certain things like the parallel access easement we mentioned be applicable for development along Highway 6. So by definition, that overlay district would apply when the property is annexed into the city limits. So there is a there's a portion of the subject site, and there's an exhibit that they provided in the PUD which shows. So there's a portion which would be under this overlay district, and we want to make sure that the document is clear on how the overlay district applies to this particular property. Because in terms of like the building material requirement, the PUD document is proposing something slightly different from what the overlay district provides. We want to make sure that there's no conflict in terms of enforcement and there's no confusion. We want to make sure we know for sure if the PUD is saying that the overlay district standards wouldn't apply at all, or it would apply to the portion where it is, where the district is, and whatever else is being proposed applies to the portion that is not within the overlay district. We need clarity on that. And similar item or related item, under building material requirements, the specification is that 75% of non-transparent elevations would be masonry, and the list of masonry products is very similar to what we require as part of our overlay district. But there is also a provision that 40% can be non-masonry, but now that 40% would exclude, the 40% would be the total elevation. So that becomes a little complicated for enforcement. We want to make sure that we can get on the same page on what would be the best approach. So if we are taking 75% of the surface excluding glass as masonry, the allowance should be excluding the glass and not the total to make it easy. Like our overlay district says 90 and 10. So we want to make sure that's included. There's also, within that same section, there's also an allowance for building material for nationally and regionally recognized businesses. We just want to make sure there are some additional parameters so that tomorrow, when we are enforcing it, we are able to clearly establish which business qualify for it. Or it should be based on like the decision of an administrative staff member, which in this case would be the zoning official. And if that interpretation is challenged, it gets challenged to the zoning board of adjustment. But we'll have to strengthen it. We'll have to have a little more clarity on that allowance or what exactly is nationally and regionally. And I believe the Manvel Town Center PUD has a little more specific details that will give you that answer. Now, we have a section which talks about temporary long-term storage allowance of 12%, within 12% of existing parking. Just want to make sure, and that's a request from the applicant, and we want to make sure we are on the same page and need some clarification on what exactly they're proposing, because there could be two different scenarios. So just for context, in the past, for Manvel Town Center, when Lowe's was making their proposal, they did request for a variance to allow for that 12% of the parking space being used for storage, but with that 12%, whatever remaining parking spaces were there, they would still meet the minimum requirement. However, based on the adjustment to the parking calculation that was approved as a variance. But in this document, when we look at it now, so they're requesting for an allowance for reduced parking count for those kind of uses. And on top of that, we're asking for a 12% reduction, 12% using 12% of parking spaces for temporary storage. We want to make sure we understand what exactly the request is and what exactly the intent is, so that we are not accidentally approving something that the council wouldn't want. Item number 16, the PUD makes a request, or the applicant is requesting that the sizes of the parking spaces be reduced slightly for 50% of the parking space within the development. It's a request that they're making, but I just want to let you all know that in the past we've had these requests, but we were not able to support it. We've had several development that has asked for that, and just wanted to give you a background on that. Item number 17 is about the shared parking analysis. Now, shared parking analysis, the PUD includes a calculation or or like a table that provides you with the numbers that you need to use when you do shared parking analysis. Now, shared parking for a development like this is definitely beneficial from a planning standpoint. It kind of makes sure it uses peak demand to kind of estimate how much of a parking would be required when you're considering different types of uses. So some uses, the peak is in the AM, some uses the peak is in the PM. It's a great idea. However, we just want some clarification to make sure where this table is coming from. If it's a standard planning or an engineering publication where it's being taken, we can support it because it's been tested. But if it's a custom table or if it is a table from another jurisdiction, we would like to see an example calculation to see if the end result is desirable or not. We just want to make sure that's addressed. Now, in terms of landscaping, I forgot to mention, so the PUD document is clear that any item which is not addressed, it defaults to city's existing zoning ordinance or other associated ordinances. Now, for all the health and safety codes, the PUD is saying that whatever code we adopt as amended, which means as amended, it would apply to the PUD. So a year later, 2 years later, if we updated our, say, health and safety codes, those codes would apply. But the PUD is requesting on certain things for the zoning ordinance to be considered what is in effect today. And for certain things, for the design criteria manual, for certain things that is applicable today. And Ian also mentioned about the 3 years timeline on certain things. So just wanted to make sure I remind you all of that. But item number 18, which talks about tree preservation and tree survey, it's a recent ordinance that we adopted. There's been some communication that we've had with the applicant in the past, and this property is a large acreage of tract with like several trees. So what the applicant has proposed is, and it's included in the packet, what they've done is they've done tree surveys for certain sample areas within the property to get a feel for what kind of vegetation is on the property. And the result is also included in the packet. I think they've identified a few elm trees within these sample areas. I don't remember off the top of my head how many, but there were some a minimal number of trees that came out to be under the protected category in terms of its size and species. And what the applicant is requesting that as part of this PUD, consider allowing like a waiver for the tree survey requirement and the tree preservation requirement, because their reasoning is that the development would require planting new trees along the street, within the parking area, for screening, shrubbery, all of that. So that's that. However, the PUD document doesn't clearly mention that under the landscaping section that there is a waiver from the tree survey and tree preservation requirement that is being asked. Or I'm not 100% sure if it is something that's in there and I've missed. We want to make sure that item is discussed and we have clarity before it goes to council. Item number 19 is about the multi-tenant signs along Highway 6 that Ian mentioned. So they're proposing like a 50-foot tall sign for that. However, I want y'all to be aware that the sign on Manvel Town Center along Highway 6, they're just 40 feet tall. So there's a 10-foot difference, and staff's position would be that it matches that so that there's no discrepancy on what the allowance is. Item number 20 is about wall-mounted sign allowance. So Ian did mention that they brought down their request from a 25% of the area of the building as sign allowance, but staff's recommendation is that there be there be a little more scrutiny in terms of some parameters for wall signage, because from a sign ordinance standpoint, best practices, there has to be certain constraints to get an effective signage rather than just a percentage of the wall area. Like I mentioned, like your spacing from the edges of the building, how much of a span it can have, the letter height, and some of it is included in the PUD, but we want to make sure there are certain other considerations too, like depending on the size of the building, as a percentage, the sign keeps getting bigger, but we want to make sure that at some point it hits a maximum and it's either 15% or the maximum square footage, because beyond a certain size, it becomes way too big. So we want to make sure we get together on that and come up with some parameters that would work for this district. And the PUD document does factor in some things that the Manvel Town Center did not, and they had to come back and get some variances. Like when your building is set back way away from Highway 6, you need lettering height that is enough for visibility and even match the scale of the building. So some of it is covered, some of it we want to make sure we discuss and figure out. There's also like a additional item which allows for extra height or letter height for logos. We want to make sure we understand what exactly that is about and make sure that we're not approving something that we are not 100% sure about. Item number 21, there is some language included about temporary signage and directional signage. Now, directional signage, Ian did clarify they went back from no limit and they've included some sizes, but we want to discuss to make sure there is certain amount of quantity also factored in and make sure we're not missing anything on that. And then regarding temporary signage allowance, the ordinance says the allowance would be based on what is allowed right now. Which right now we are very generous in terms of temporary signage, and there is a chance that in the future that might change depending on what the city's preference is or city's vision is in terms of the look and feel for the corridor. And we want to make sure that as the ordinance is amended, it is captured for this development as well. We don't want this particular development to have a temporary signage allowance that is significantly different from all the other businesses down the lane. So we want to make sure that is captured. So that is one item that we need to talk about. Item number 22 is about fences. Like I said, if something is not clearly discussed or it's not mentioned in the document, it defaults to the city's ordinance. But fence is such a thing that the developer may have certain things in mind that would come up as they start planning and developing the property. We want to make sure that if there's anything that needs to be done differently from what our ordinance is, there could be something that the ordinance may not allow that they would want to include, and if it is beneficial for the development, it can be included in the PUD, and that would help them avoid another variance down the line. So we want to point their attention to that aspect. Like we also discussed, the definition list has to be looked at one more time to make sure there are all the definitions needed for the enforcement and clear understanding of the PUD is included. Right now what we see is there's a lot of definitions that's included in the list, which is not referenced in the document. One example would be knuckle. There's a word knuckle which is defined, but we don't use it in the document. Institutional uses, we define it, but we don't use it in the document. And there are some terms like the LED signs. What would LED signs mean? It's not in the definition. We talk about anchor tenant in the text, but it's not defined. So certain things like that. And some of it would be things that got missed while they were working on one draft to another. We want to make sure that is all covered before we approve anything, because the last thing we want is enforcement nightmare or enforcement or interpretation issues causing delay on when they start working on their development. Item number 24, the document still mentions city's designated official, which is one of the provisions that was in there in the previous version, where what they were proposing is that city have a designated official administratively, like one of staff members, who is able to authorize minor changes, slight changes here and there. But what we recommended, and they did get a point, is like staff would like any change, like land use wise and major significant changes in terms of the standards and requirements, other than clerical changes or adding an exhibit and things of that sort, to happen through the public hearing process through PD&Z and City Council. So, but there's a couple of locations where it's still lingering, the term city's designated official, and there's a section where it looks like they're still talking about administrative determination of land uses. We want to make sure we clear that out completely, because I don't think there's need for that when we address some of the other land use related aspects. I mean, your car washes, your gas, if once all of that is cleared out, you don't need administrative determination for land uses. So I'm pretty sure it's an easy fix on that one. The last three items is just general clarification and minor, like fixing typos, formatting, taking out anything that is repetition of text or an error, updating exhibits to align with the text, which Ian mentioned. Like one example would be, if you look at the exhibit associated with the monument sign, it still shows 3 signs along Highway 6, but the text says 2 signs, so we want to make sure they're all fixed. And the last item is, under landscaping, there's a reference in the PUD document which talks about all pervious area shall be counted towards the total landscape area, including the maintenance berm of detention ponds, if maintenance berms incorporate landscaping and pedestrian trails where feasible to enhance connectivity and visual appeal. So I'm calling that out is I want to make sure that's one of the items that is captured as part of your discussions and your recommendation to council, where I do recall some of our discussions from the past where the applicant had discussed possibility of some connectivity trails in their detention area, rather than making it like a detention, making it usable as and when, however it's possible. But we want to make sure we discuss that and provide it as a clarity of what's expected of them to be done and what could be left on if possible and chance and all of that. There has to be a certain minimum that we discuss and talk about. So that is the list of items we had from staff's perspective when we looked at the most recent draft that was provided. And what we are recommending is that if y'all are okay with these comments, forward a recommendation of approval with the condition that these items are addressed before the city council meeting. And if there is any item in here that you have a particular, you want to discuss, or if you have questions of us where you're like, hey, you're talking about this, but we do not agree with this, this needs to be taken out, or if there is something in there which doesn't clearly say which way to go and y'all have an opinion, or you want to discuss and say, hey, on this particular item, PD&Z wants to recommend that you do X or Y or whatever. So that's what our recommendation is for tonight. And like the report mentioned, based on the applicant's timeline, their request is that we have an action and a recommendation for City Council to take action in order to follow the timeline that they have in mind.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abraham, that was very thorough.
I'll start by saying thank you for city staff. I mean, this is a lot of work to go through. It's been very useful to have all your notes and also incorporating all the notes that we've sent you over the past week, and also to the applicants as well for just being responsive and working back and forth, you know, all in the interest of trying to get everything done as quickly as possible and thoroughly. So my recommendation is going to be to, I know I have a few notes, I think everybody has a few notes, is just kind of go one by one, and then we can bounce back and forth as we need to answer the questions and then move on to the next one. So I'm going to be selfish and start, because I get to. For number 5, for the only thing I see in there that stood out to me was like telecom towers. I don't know if there's a way to put another stipulation on that or limits, you know, whether it be height or And then, like you said, I agree. I think most of everything that's on your list was something I had noted as well. So these are just things I see in addition to. The telecom towers is the only item in there I really see that kind of stands out as something that I just needs further scrutiny at minimum. So
That's already been struck, Ryan.
that one's been struck.
Yeah.
That makes makes it
there-
easy.
Yes, yeah. And I'd like to say, I mean, just that whole presentation, while thorough, and thank you, Jos, it's just, bottom line, it's a lot of cleanup.
Yeah.
It's just some cleanup items. There are some majors in here, sidewalk, outdoor storage, and the parking, okay? The reality is, we presented in front of staff and said, hey, look, we're not opposed to sidewalks. It's just, we want to have a conversation. I mean, what's practical? We understand there's a lot of city support for sidewalks. We'll do sidewalks. It's just, given where it's at, where it's located, and its connectivity to Manvel Town Center that doesn't have sidewalks, considering how fast I was driving down Highway 6 the last few weeks and how fast everybody else is that what the city wants at this particular location? So we're open to any option, really, right there.
And I think just on the topic of sidewalks, I think sidewalks are important. And like I said, Manvel Town Center, while the buildings are new, its PUD is very, very old. that sat around for a long time on just paper. So, and I think especially in the past 3 or 4 years, the importance of sidewalks is starting to become more and more.
And I get it.
And where they're located, all those things, I agree with you. That was one of my concerns too. Is where is the sidewalk going to be? Because its proximity to Highway 6 is important for safety. So those are details I think that might have to get ironed out in the planning stages versus just the zoning part of it. But it's that was on my list of things that were important. I'll go ahead and move on to my next one. Was related to number 7 here, as far as the uses within I think you said that y'all were wanting to limit it to one of kind of each type already anyway, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So yeah, I agree with that for within the.
In proximity, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ryan, but the proximity comment that Jos had mentioned too, it's limiting to one, and then we're also going to limit the automotive uses. Okay, these are nationally recognized. We spelled them out. Limit them to the western end of the project.
Okay.
And so I think that's an achievable way of doing it, but specifically to address that.
Okay. And then on agenda item, note number 8 here, I was agreeing with your 2-mile separation. I think in there it might have said by name, by type, I think is what the ordinance calls for. And like I said, if we have, if there's a mechanism in there, if they want to put in another one in there, that it can be reviewed and allowed, even though it's not specifically allowed in the PUD, I think that'd be a useful tool.
And on the land use, Commissioner, I just want to make sure, some of the things, in discussions, the applicant has mentioned and agreed. Mm-hmm. We just want to make sure that it's in the document, correct. And it's in the document in a way that it's really clear and doesn't result in interpretation
right.
issues.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that you said that they've already said as well. So like I said, a lot of it's just making the paper reflect what's already been stated. So these are just the things I noted that I want to either clarify or hopefully add. Item number 16, I think 50% is a lot on the smaller parking spaces. I kind of lean towards the no as well, but at minimum less than 50%. So that's just my personal
I would go
feeling.
against you on that one. To me, I don't think it should be at all, because that was something that was worked on by PD&Z for years.
Yes.
And it was a
I
fight
genuinely
with the
feel that.
citizens, it was a fight with the lot, back and forth. Because a lot of it was based on different type of vehicles. Mm-hmm. You get big trucks in there, you get everything else. And it was kind of protecting the citizens' vehicles as well on this.
Yeah.
And that's the reason the fight was that, and that's the only reason I would stand there and say no.
And that's how I predominantly feel, so. Agenda item 17, sorry, note number 17 here, on the parking, it just doesn't call out anything in there regarding quantity of like handicap parking. I think in Manvel Town Center, I think the amount of handicap parking is very, very low. You know, HEB is a big store and they have, I think, 12 spaces. And I've never been there to see any of those available. So I don't, if we can just include a quantity in there that's slightly higher than, nothing unreasonable, just 20% higher.
Can we just go by
10%.
code?
So that's what the document currently says, that it goes by the ADA requirement. But what I'm hearing from you is that your suggestion is that it be slightly higher.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's my suggestion, so a point for discussion. On your trees for number 18 here, I mean, if we're going to include the waiver for the trees on the site, that's a practical thing. Some trees, I would love to save as many trees as possible, but, it's not always practical if you got to build, everything around randomly placed trees. The only thing I would ask is if we're going to include the waiver for the trees, is that the replanted trees be larger in size instead of the 1.5 or 2.5 inch caliper, which are essentially a 3/4 inch stalk or a 1 inch stalk on the trees, that they be larger, more like a 4 inch caliper for the bigger trees and 2.5 inch caliper for the smaller trees. I agree with your 40 feet if to match the town center, if nothing else for consistency on the signage, on the street signs there for number 19. I think those are my major things I see that were just either not completely addressed or in your notes here already. So if you have any questions about any of those.
No, I think we've made sure we included that as part of our notes, and
Okay.
if it'll be helpful if you all capture that when you make the motion as well.
Yes.
If you all want to discuss and.
And I'll let everybody else go, and then I guess we can come up with our list of additional notes or changes to notes here. Ms. Raskin, would you like to take it away with any
Well, back
notes
on
you
the
have?
sign thing. Is that classified as a monument sign or a pole sign?
So like the applicant mentioned, from the original version, there was a little bit of cleanup done where now it's limited to wall sign, monument sign.
Okay.
And I think the exhibit also shows you like a example image. And then the multi-tenant sign, which is again modeled off of what Manvel Town Center has. It's similar, making sure that it's, so there are no pole signs. The other allowance is the temporary sign and the directional sign, similar to like when you go to a where it says, hey, turn this way, or.
That's standard. I mean, it's, yeah. Okay, that was really it for me.
Okay.
Ms. Martin?
At 27, I do agree we need far more discussion because I'm not sure what they're planning to do, and it may not be what we would like to do.
Correct. And you mean the last item, right?
Yes, sir.
So on that, where we're at is, so initially, and this is, we are establishing a PUD. They haven't started the detailed design and excavation and all of that, like the topographic plans and all of that. So when we get to that position, what the applicant had discussed at one point is like when they do their detention pond and maintenance, the ponds in the back, they're not going to just dig a hole and just water goes there and that's it. What they've suggested is that they would like that to be a feature of their development, which is attractive and which is also usable if possible. And what they suggested is like they would have landscaping as part of the maintenance berms. There'll be some trails that they could be they could possibly add and connect it with the overall development as a feature rather than just another detention pond where nobody goes, nobody sees, nothing happens. Now, we want to make sure that if that is the intent, when we are talking about that in the PUD document, we agree with the applicant that certain things, we don't know if it's going to be possible. But then there are certain things that could be included because the language that I included talks about if they do that, they get landscaping credits for commercial development there, and that to limit it to a certain percentage. But we want to make sure that what is being done, there is a certain minimum set. Beyond that, if possible, is fine. But to say that we've had this discussion and the commission and the council expectation is that's what's going to happen, but the PUD says if possible it'll happen, and for some reason later on, if there's no way to do it now, you're not able to meet the expectation. We just want to avoid that discrepancy. So we want to get with the applicant and come up with a consensus on what could be the minimum that can be included in the document. So
Well,
that's
it would certainly add ambiance to what they want to do.
sure.
That's our full intent. We do intend to do that. What we're not going to do is create an eyesore that impacts the value of the project. I mean, ultimately, the detention, we'll call it, but let's call it a feature, that this particular site has. It's 37%. Our detention requirement is about 37% of this entire 47 acres. So we've got an overabundance of detention that doesn't really contribute to the actual AV of the project. So with the landscaping requirements that we have and the tree ordinance that exists today, and we want to work closely, I mean, we did that tree sample as just kind of a preemptive, proactive measure to kind of see what we had. So given all that, I mean, we're going to utilize a lot of that area for our tree requirements, but for the aesthetics of the project. I want to talk to Beazer. I mean, we hired the same engineering company. I want to talk to Beazer about what they intend to do in that section 4, just north of us. Maybe we can connect their community into that area and create, a trail system, but we don't know. We don't know exactly how it's going to look, but we intend for it to be.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, Ms. Atkinson, please take it away.
Okay,
I'm
I
ready.
have quite a few. First of all, I agree with the sidewalk, because once you come around and go up 48, that's all gonna be a neighborhood over there, so I wholeheartedly agree with the sidewalk. The next thing I wanna address is, for the past couple of times, we've heard this is gonna be a higher end retail, or higher end, more magnificent. I don't think you need monument signs and pole signs. I think it needs to just be a pole sign, because monument signs are going to take, not people aren't going to see that when they're driving down Highway 6 anyway, because they're going to be a certain size. The criteria that's listed on here, half of it is not high-end. Most of it is not high-end. I don't see an NTB being in here with the Perry Steakhouse. That's my thing, is I want these sit-down restaurants. When y'all say high-end, that's what I'm thinking. I know we're a smaller community, but I don't want to drive to Webster. I don't want to drive to Sugar Land. I want to be able to have it here. Not Pearland, but here. I was hoping it would be kind of along those lines, or I know Papa's isn't building anything lately, but a Papacitos would be nice. Just something where, hey, it's our anniversary, let's go down the street and have a good dinner. That's what I'm thinking when y'all say higher end. I'm not thinking vape shops, auto repair, and on the auto repair, that stuff, if whatever comes in on the auto repair side, nothing can be out in the parking lot. Nothing should be left in the parking lot overnight. It should all be inside, because again, that's not high end. The trees. I am a tree person. I appreciate you did a survey up front, but if there is a huge tree out there with a huge circumference, why would you tear that down, is my question. Why not find a way to incorporate that into your surroundings? And you don't have to answer any of these. This is just me saying it so Joe's can hear it. Joe's actually helped me out with a lot of this stuff on the email. But yes, the tree, if it's a huge diameter and it's been there for 200 years, I don't think we need to tear it down. I think it needs to be incorporated somehow, even if you want to put something around it and make a seating area or whatever. It also has in here about drive-in theater. I don't think we need a drive-in theater there. I haven't heard anybody else do that, but
Ms. Mary, I
think
just
that was
want to give a
excluded.
clarification, like, those are under non-permitted uses, like your vape shop is included as a non-permitted.
Right.
So those uses will not be in the,
okay. 'Cause
And
I
we
was
need
just
to add
going by
car wash and gas
discussing this
station
at the
on the list,
meeting. And I got the pawn shop deal that I understand. The other thing, which I don't know if you've had a chance to say anything to Bobby about yet, with the neighborhood coming in right behind y'all, with Town Center doing what they've done, and y'all building this location here, where's the wildlife going to be? What's going to happen to our country wildlife? I was hoping to suggest that if there's a huge herd of deer or something out there, that maybe we can move them somewhere else or something to a sanctuary or something. I mean, nobody likes the hogs, but they're still wildlife. I just don't want to see all of it go down. I know there was a provision in here about migrating birds and everything. That's wonderful. That's exactly what we need. But I'm going to say this to a lot. We have a lot of retail already. I would really like to see a higher end clientele in this section since it's, it's here. It's just, we've got enough of this stuff that's out here. We as citizens, and I'm talking about me, but the people that I know, we would like to see something just a little bit higher end than a Home Depot or 50 retail centers or, NTB, but it's just, I'm throwing those names out there hoping that something will fall off the wall because the stuff that needs to stick is something that we're really looking for in our community are these family-style sit-down restaurants.
Amen.
And we've got enough fast food. Chick-fil-A is fine. I'm not a Chick-fil-A fan, but I know y'all talked about Chick-fil-A. But more or less, that's the extent of what kind of fast food would probably need to go in there. But still, I'm going to harp on that higher end. I don't mind spending my money at those restaurants if I could just drive right down the street.
Yeah.
It's my hard-earned money, and if I want to spend it at Perry's or Papacitos or whatever, it's right here. I don't have to go to some other city to do that. So, but again, with the wildlife, I'm kind of worried about that because there is a lot back there. There was a lot back there when they started building Rodeo Palms. But with everything else coming in around there, there's nowhere left for them to go. And that's why I moved out here. So, but again, also with the signs, I don't think there needs to be monument signs. I think one pole sign should have everybody on there. The signs on the building, whatever code is, but I don't think we need a pole sign and monument signs. I don't want it to look like 1960. So.
sorry. I just wanted to provide one clarification on the sign. So this is like a large development, and you may have seen this with Manvel Town Center too. So the monument sign and the multi-tenant large sign, they serve two different purposes. So you'll see some pad sites along Highway 6, and then you'll have some pads which are towards the back and towards the, like, behind the first row of pads. So some of the multi-tenant sign would be for businesses like further back, for which they don't have a monument sign, or for which a monument sign is not practical. Now, the multi-tenant may not be able to capture every single business, because you'll have pad site with retail centers that may have 3, 4, or maybe 5 businesses. So they need visibility along Highway 6. So the multi-tenant signs would cover that. And individual pads along Highway 6, say, for example, that are freestanding buildings and they have enough room, the single monument tenant, a single multi-tenant monument sign would be for those kind of situations. So they're doing two different things within a shopping center usually.
Would we need a monument sign outside something that already has the sign on the building, though? You see what I'm saying? I think it's just kind of like taking up the
Right.
characteristic of Manvel.
We do understand, but our current zoning, our current sign ordinance does allow for that. For an integrated shopping center, there's allowance for multi-tenant.
But we're making a whole new patio.
Yeah, and if that's the preference, we can definitely
I
consider
mean,
that.
that's just if they're sitting out there, they're going to have their sign on the building already. And then I just think that that's, again, taken away from the characteristics of Manvel. And it's Manvel, not Manville.
I would like to make one comment. And I understand your point completely. When talking to the mayor and some of the city staff about the signage, we had talked about having 3 monument signs, which a site like that with that much frontage, it would be considered acceptable around the country. We made a joint decision that, hey, look, let's try to minimize the signs. And I didn't realize Manvel Town Centers were 40 feet. That's fine. I mean, we can work with that. We did 45-foot signs in Magnolia. The reality is that these restaurants and these users absolutely require these types of signs to come to these locations.
Well,
I mean, I totally get
Yeah.
you, but like the Texas Roadhouse we did in Magnolia recently, I just went through their whole sign package to kind of figure out what kind of sizes they need, and they can deviate some. But when it comes to actually being on a monument sign, they have to have their own monument sign. These well-known companies, let's just say, nationally
does
recognized.
Texas Roadhouse and Pearland have a monument sign?
I'd be willing to bet, absolutely.
They do not.
Do they not? Well,
It's just, like I said, it's an option.
Look, I brought up one
Obviously,
example.
yeah.
I brought up one example.
Yeah, it's on the building because their sign faces 288.
Well, it's risky bringing up examples. Okay, so
I'm just
please
saying,
just
but
understand that
it's
I'm
just
I'm trying to just give you kind of
I
the market
understand.
feedback.
I just
and-
want to give that perspective out to you guys that, to me, less is more. But
And we're trying to
more is
accommodate
more,
that.
too.
We really are. We're
Yeah.
trying to accommodate that.
I
So,
mean, I think if you put them at the entrance, that would be acceptable.
So,
I mean,
But it all
it's,
depends on the layout. I mean,
and that's similar to how the Manvel Town Center was approved, where the multi-tenant sign, the large pylon signs are at the entrance. It's allowed at the entrance and nowhere else. And individual pads have their.
And I personally think what's at the town center actually looks pretty good as far as signage for a shopping center goes. I mean,
Looks very nice.
it's compact, it's clean.
so I mean, if we use that as a guideline, I personally think that,
It's a good one to follow.
I'm finished, thank you.
okay. Yes, sir.
All
Mr.
I
Richardson,
have-
please.
I just have one, and Joe said, so I just want to make sure I got this right. So what code is not included in this PUD reverts back to Manville City codes at the time of adoption of the PUD?
The health and safety, like your building code, your fire codes, all of that would be as amended. Like if next year we amend to and we update it, the updated would apply. But there are a couple of things that they are suggesting that what is currently when the PUD is being adopted stays that way for the next 3 years, like applicant mentioned. And some of it is like design criteria, manual related requirements, which we do change every year, but they want to make sure that there's some sort of predictability for them as they are planning and designing stuff. So certain things, it would be updated version would apply. Certain things, what is currently in effect would apply.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So as far as a motion here, what do y'all need?
I think they need to address the 27 as stated.
Yeah.
Take out what you don't want, but address them, period. Want me to make the motion?
See, I think we got a couple here. That's what I just want to clarify real quick before we do that.
A couple we were gonna take out, but they could do that.
Well, a couple I think we wanted to add on to.
Okay.
So Joe's, what do y'all need for us? You have our notes so far.
So,
So do we just need the 27 recommendations plus the notes, or do we need something more specific?
I think that's fair enough, Bobby, where you can say the 27 items with
Would that clarify?
additional notes.
It's enough specificity to give staff knowledge of what we're doing and still get that to council according to your recommendations. So I don't know how specific, if you want to go point by point, it's a little overkill, but if there's a good summary or some of the high points or something, I think we've got good notes for the rest of it.
Okay.
So from my notes, the telecom tower was an issue, but the applicant confirmed that they're already working on it. Sidewalk, you mentioned, the 2-mile separation, you mentioned it's already in there. So outside of everything that we had, I believe the telecom tower and the handicap parking spaces were 2 items from your list. And, there was one more. If the tree survey and preservation waiver is provided, the sizes be upgraded. So those were the 3, and from your standpoint, you emphasized the tree preservation and the monument signage allowance to be considered to see if we have to strike a balance between multi-tenant and single-tenant monument signs.
And then number 27.
And you
just
did
wanted to
mention
size
high-end clientele, but I believe we do capture that bits and pieces on all these items that we have, so.
And I also agree with Kyle on the parking. I don't want somebody hitting my car getting out of their vehicle.
Right, and that was Kyle's input, that he agreed with everything on Ryan, plus hard and fast no on the 50%. And the applicant's response was that that's something that they can work with us.
There
And
was
then-
one thing brought up too about
Yes, sir.
the older trees. And I don't know how we would tell besides the circumference of it, but, and I'm not a tree expert, so wouldn't know how to add that. But yeah, if you have a tree that is a couple hundred years old, I'd hate to see it tore down if at all possible. But the other ones that are younger than that, I don't have attachment to, I guess is the best way to say it, but.
I mean, we've agreed to abide by the newly adopted tree ordinance. So I don't really understand why we're talking about it all that much. Like, we want to save as many trees as we can.
So
And-
Ryan, we're talking about it because you've said it several times over phone calls and stuff, but the document that we have
Okay,
doesn't
okay.
clearly address it. We want to make sure that
Okay.
words are put on paper.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Okay, so,
There needs to be a lot of cleanup, but
Okay,
we're
so-
there. We're getting very close.
yes, okay, so the motion's going to be recommendation to council with the 27 notes plus the
Added notes.
added notes from discussion tonight.
I will second it.
Second, all those in favor? And all opposed? No. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, agenda item H, consideration and possible action to direct staff to provide applicants written statements of the conditions for any conditional approvals and the reasons for disapproval of any plans or plats that were not approved for Texas Local Government Code 212.0091.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. And I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Here, here.
Unanimous 5-0. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. It was a very good discussion. I'll have a great evening.